All right, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call together the October 12th, 2023 school committee meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This evening, we have a consent agenda posted, as well as we have the minutes from our September 28th, 2023 meeting and the oath of the bills and payroll. We have a motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
Motion made by Stacy,
I'll second the motion.
seconded by Jen. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Mark that unanimous. Thank you very much. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. So if there's anybody in the room or at home on Zoom that wishes to be heard, there'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting as well.
We do not have any.
Okay, we'll close that portion of the meeting, and we will move on to our recognition portion of the evening. So Jacinda Sanders is here again. Thank you for joining us. She's going to give the student representative report.
In Sugar Lane last week, they had their first community meeting of the year. This is not David. I'm sorry.
No problem. Take your time. We're running ahead of schedule, so we've got a minute or two to catch up.
If I could take a moment just to recognize three students at the high school.
Absolutely.
There are three students who received commended status at the high school for the performance of the PSATs, and they were recognized at the building. Let Kelly know today, and we'll send a press release out from Jay King, who's our student rep here tonight. He's playing soccer, I believe. And we had Lisa Hood and Benjamin Schuffer. So I want to recognize them and congratulate them.
Congratulations. Good work.
Great stuff.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Jacinda, you outside, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Next week, actually doing the book fair will be there. This is a high interest event for students, and Sugar Lane invites students to visit the book fair on Monday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and on Wednesday 12:45 p.m. to 2:45 p.m. At Russell Street, they're enjoying the fall weather with PE classes outside with Mr. Power and taking break from instructional times. They're also wrapping up fall math assessments and really digging into grade level content. As they get closer to the end of the month, plans are being finalized for class and Halloween celebrations. They're also excited about the RSS Family STEM Challenge that will be launching tomorrow during morning announcements. So cheers for Russell Street. The middle school students took their first math test of the year, and they're really proud of the dedication the students had to the test. Friday is the 6th grade kids night out from 5:30 to 7:30, and the cost will be $5, and the concessions for sale. At the high school, the PSAT is this weekend, Saturday. Next week is Spirit Week with a different spirit each day leading up to the homecoming, pink, and senior night football game on October 20th. The homecoming game will be October 20th, and the homecoming dance will be Saturday, October 21st. In-school college visits will continue throughout the fall. UMass Amherst, the University of Rhode Island, and Birmingham State are some of the many colleges to come next week. The National Honor Society is doing a new pillow drive for the month of October to help support Deb's Beds, which helps children who do not have a bed to sleep in.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Harrington, thank you for sharing that other recognition. Is there any other recognition that anybody has this evening, or should we move on to?
I have one or two.
There you go.
I'd like to give a shout out to Mike Lynn for all his hard work and reorganizing games and practices due to the weather we've been having. And it's a tough world as an AD when weather doesn't cooperate, and a lot of work goes into rescheduling games, etc. So thanks to Mike Lynn for that. We've had a great fall season despite the weather that we've had. Games are keep going. Good participation rates from crowds and parents. So we're having a great season. Last one is, it was very nice to see some new pavement on Russell Street Road. I think everybody would share in my excitement and actually seeing asphalt down instead of potholes and gravel. So we're headed in the right direction.
You're here.
Here.
Very good. All right, you're up next. So our first and only new business item this evening is the superintendent's report. Dr. Kelly Clinchey will give an update on the 2023-2024 enrollment as of October 1, 2023. The DESE targeted district review, LPS connection series, and community behavioral health centers.
All right, thank you.
Take it away.
In your package, you have the October 1st enrollment. If you recall, every year we have to submit an October 1st enrollment to DESE. And the good thing to note is we had a few minor shifts in population in various grades, but the total number of students remained the same. Well, it's always a nice thing when you see those shifts happening, and in the end, the enrollment was stabilized. Targeted district review. I sent a letter to you last Friday with a summary of the targeted review. First of all, the targeted review happens every now and again, and districts are randomly selected. We happen to be one of those districts. In the memo that I sent the school committee, various components, they have interviews with students and various other focus groups, instructional observations in our schools, and they look at randomly look at educator evaluation files as well. The areas that we were selected to take a look at, backtrack a bit, we did a self-reflection on all of the areas that had to be handed in by August 30th, and we submitted that. From there, they take a look at what we submitted and choose 3 areas that they would like to look at. And first area is leadership and governance. I did send out an email this afternoon to Elaine, taking a look at or explaining some of the areas or questions that they'd be asking some representatives of the school committee. My understanding is 3 school committee members would be interviewed, and Chairman McCarthy, I'm going to leave that up to you when the time comes to select the other 2, if possible. I think as chair, you should be part of that focus group.
Sure.
Second section, human resources and professional development, and the third section is financial and asset management. So this review it's already begun, but people from the company will be on site during the week of November 13th. Okay. Any questions on that? So,
When do you think when will we hear from these folks, and how will we hear? Through you?
there'll be a report designed sometime. It could be 4, 5, 6 months down the road.
For the interviews, I meant.
Oh, the interviews?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
When they-
jumping ahead of myself
Yeah.
here. The interviews, I'll let you know.
Okay.
We don't have a schedule yet, so as soon as we have some more information, we'll get it out to you. And today we sent a information letter to families in town as well about the targeted review.
When is the last time we had one of these visits?
Not since I've been here,
Oh, okay.
so it's been a while.
Gotcha.
I don't think I'm the only superintendent that would make that statement. So I think what's happened, they've hired a third party to do these reviews as well. They were trying to do them internally before, and I think having enough staff to do them would have been problematic and challenging. So
Do you have a sense of how many of these are being done simultaneously across the state?
Beth, 13? Was it about 13?
15?
Yeah, 13. 15?
Super lucky.
We did. Should go out and buy some lottery tickets after that.
California last night.
Yes.
Okay. And then is there anything that's going to pertain to us in terms of the budget documentation, the financial and asset management that be school committee related as well, or will
No, that typically will be
handled by
uploading.
the central office?
We'll be uploading support or reports from central office, and if you get a chance and when you look at that email I sent you, you'll have an idea of what they're going to be looking for when they interview the school committee.
Okay.
So nothing high level in terms of documents.
Great.
They leave that up to us
Sure.
to do. So
So I'll just, if anyone's chomping at the bit to be part of the team, see me afterwards. Otherwise, we'll just figure it out. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
LPS Connection Series. We had our first event on October 3rd. So topic was adolescent anxiety and depression. I felt it was a very good session, and people that were there had an opportunity to ask questions. It was a nice little environment where people felt comfortable. topic at times, or, it's a little hard for some people, and as a result, they may not feel comfortable coming to a venue like that, but certainly getting the message out. I was very pleased that we were able to have somebody come from the community behavioral health centers to set up a table and talk to superintendent and Lynn and Beth about what they have to offer. We knew these entities existed, but there's been no outreach, and we really wanted to make sure we cemented some connections. So I put a pamphlet in your package. This is a great opportunity for every community. One of our challenges, like any other district, is when students need assistance, families need assistance beyond what we can provide because we have limited expertise. We use Care Solace, but we want to make sure that people get the help that they need as soon as possible. If you look at the behavioral health centers, there's one in Framingham, Waltham, and Marlborough and Harvard. So according to the individual that was representing them during that evening, she said that they have a lot of staff as well. So things are going really well. So this is a great opportunity for not only our community, but all communities to start filling that void that we've all witnessed during the last 3 years. So if you ever have anybody approach you, or if you want to put this on a social media site, that would be very, very helpful and appreciated.
Can I make a comment about the connections?
Of course.
So I was there, and we talked about this. I just wanted to share with the rest of the school committee members and maybe those that are watching. I thought it was very well done. The speaker was dynamic. I would actually encourage you to maybe invite that speaker back next year. And I would say that it is a tough topic. The toughest part about these things, I think, is getting the word out and getting people in the room, because only those of us in the room really took something away from that, right? But even though you might not necessarily be concerned about anxiety or depression in your own household, I think that can creep into any household. There were takeaways that you can use: extended family, coworkers, things like that. So it was powerful. I got a lot out of it, and I would encourage us to do it again. So thank you for setting that up. Yeah,
appreciate the feedback.
Kelly, can I just ask a quick question about advocates? What's the funding source for that?
Or
is it
behavioral
for
health
families
centers
to access the services at advocates?
They would use their healthcare plans.
Okay.
But it would reach that stage of intervention where it would require healthcare plans.
But even those without health insurance would not able to be
Right.
serviced. It's an alternative to an emergency room similar, so they wouldn't be turned away, but they do use private health. They do accept private health insurance. They accept Mass Health, and they wouldn't be turned away for not having insurance.
Thank you.
And that brings me to the end of my update.
great. All right, so we have a presentation scheduled for this evening. Got all four principals here. So this is the new school improvement plan update, standard 1 curriculum, instruction assessment. We're going to hear from all four principals independently, and it looks like Shaker Lane and Michelle Can. You are, yep. Michelle Can's up first. We leading off. Gonna set the tone. Well,
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Kane's running out of steam. Hi, everyone. It's Thursday, it's Friday Eve. Thank you for having us tonight. The first one, curriculum and instruction, we'll talk about Shaker Lane. So our goals are not limited to just these goals, but these are the ones that we have set forth in our school improvement plan. We just had our first school council meeting this week, and what I shared with them is this is the plan that we have in front of us. We can always add to it, but these are areas of focus that we are going to definitely focus on, but we can always add to it. So our first goal is, and this also follows along with Russell Street and with Beth Steele, our Director of Teaching and Learning, implementing a standards-based pre-K to 12 curriculum that is aligned with state frameworks, articulated both vertically and horizontally. This is my 7th year at Shaker Lane, and I think we've made a lot of headway here. When I first came here, there was not as much vertical alignment or horizontal alignment that I've seen over the past several years. And I think that's a compliment to our district, to the leadership we have, to Mrs. Temple and I working together, and really looking at, how can we make the curriculum, seamless across the grade levels and then vertically. So a couple of years ago, we brought in the Lucy Calkins writing program. So I have Lucy Calkins down there, but there's many others. There's our math program that we brought in last year. Lucy Calkins, I believe we're in year 2, probably year 3. The first year we did a semi-pilot was the year of COVID. So this is our second solid year of Lucy Calkins. This is our second year of math. And so we're continuing to provide feedback on that, working with the teachers to see what they need from us. The second one also dovetails with that. We just had earlier this week, we had a consultant come in and work with us on in our math program. She did some walkthroughs, 3 classrooms in each grade level, just a quick little walkthrough, just a glimpse into a classroom to provide some positive feedback to our staff. Saw some wonderful things in which she'll be reaching out to them and sharing those thoughts. To provide feedback with our math program, we continue to engage professional development in our math program. Our PD next week for our staff on the half day is around the math program. And we are currently researching and evaluating the English language arts program for next year. We started that at the end of last year with a needs assessment. And we are working through that this year under Beth Steele and with some other key players at Shaker Lane and Russell Street. On the next page, multiple forms of data. So we are bringing in, this is our first year with M-Class. You've heard me talk about, oh my gosh, AIMSweb. It's funny how you just forget that program. AIMSweb Plus was what we had used for the past 2 years. This year we are moving over to M-Class. We just recently finished up our fall assessments. Parents will be getting that information soon. Our grade level teams will be meeting next week to identify specific students that they will be targeting instruction for. We also have students that have been picked up from the M-Class data from our reading specialists, our math specialists, our math interventionist has also picked up students from the Title I assessments for Title I that she's done her beginning of year assessments. So you see something about that. The Lexia program. This is a program that we became familiar with during COVID. It has a high price point, but the teachers feel that it does give students an opportunity to practice at home on their own and in school, and it meets them where they're at. So this is our second year of purchasing it for all of the grades, kindergarten, transitional, first and second, and we'll continue to evaluate the usage of that, which it was high last year. So we continue to fund that program this year. And the next piece we have is identifying effective instructional practices to support the academic achievement of social, emotional, diverse learners. So we have our Hegarty program. We're reviewing our math and reading progress through daily meetings. As I mentioned, next week in our grade level meetings, we'll be diving into the M-Class data to look at reading. In the coming month, we'll look at math after that. And just continue to put interventions in place, track students, collect data, reevaluate, kind of a PLC, professional learning community model. I think those are my 2 slides.
Yep.
Any questions or?
I have a quick question about, so last meeting, Beth was talking about the math assessment. Does that give you similar information to Lexia, or how do they integrate?
So MAP is administered in grade 2, math and ELA. The assessments are a little bit different. I wouldn't say, did you ask me if it was comparable to Hegarty?
No.
To which one? To Lexia?
Yeah.
So Lexia, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's an adaptive reading program that meets kids where they're at, a lot of phonetic usage, and then builds them up. So if they are working on letter ID, letter sound, those are the activities that they are presented with. And then it adapts to where they're ready to learn. The math growth assessments are universal. It's not an adaptive program. Oh, sorry.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Beth. Sorry.
I think the big, do you mind if I jump in? Please. The big difference is that one is a curricular program that allows students to do lessons and build upon their skills in lesson format, and then can be assessed periodically after they've done some skilled learning. That's through Lexia. Whereas MAP is kind of a one-time dipstick
of just an assessment. It does not, the teacher has to provide the path and the skills and the lessons moving forward. Whereas the Lexia is programmatic and math is strictly assessment.
I
Okay,
think
yeah,
more
so
along
that's
the
what I
lines of
guess I was wondering,
MCAS.
if the data that you get from MAP kind of aligns with the Lexia lessons so that.
I haven't looked at it to see if it does, and I haven't pulled the Lexia data and compared it with grade 2 math. I haven't.
Yeah,
Something
no,
we can
that's
look
fine.
into.
It sounds like you've got a lot of different initiatives that. It's good to see if there's ways it can be great.
Jen.
Nope, I'm good.
Just had a couple of questions on the, like on the it's Lucy Calkins writing program. There was like a, you know, like a little, I don't know if it was an article or research like that, but I think it was probably like Lucy Calkins reading program, where there was like not necessarily enough emphasis on the phonetics, but then I see that we're covering that perhaps with the Haggerty phonetic awareness. Like, I just want to make, am I interpreting that correctly, that the Lucy Calkins is strictly the writing program?
So that is, so I would
Okay.
say phonetics, we would look at foundations
Okay.
for phonics and phonemic awareness. We
Got
would look at Haggerty, and then Lucy Calkins would be the writing process,
Mm-hmm.
starting with an idea, building upon it, talking about the 3 different types of writing, persuasive, opinion, narrative.
Gotcha.
So that's more writing component.
Okay, perfect. Just like points of clarification, that's all. And then for the second one here, for the goal is like the math, one of the indicators of success was the creation of a math committee. Has that already taken place? That's up and running, or?
So
that's
the
goal that
math
we hope to
committee, so
accomplish
we
this year?
had that last year. This plan did span a couple of years. We are still talking the math. I would say more, maybe not the math committee that Beth had created, but more internal,
Mhm.
like me, Beth Moore, our math interventionist. We have those conversations.
And then there's a comment there about professional development. So do we have specific professional development for the Into Math program that we've created, that's happening a couple times a year, or how's that working?
Yep. So earlier this week, I'm not sure of her last name. I can only remember her name is Samantha. She came in earlier this week to our school and Russell Street and is providing feedback for us on the program. So she started on Tuesday. She did some walkthroughs of the classrooms. She's part of our professional development. Next week, she's spending half of the time at Russell Street, half of the time with us, to give us some feedback on, you know, what the teachers want. And this really was directed from the teachers. They wanted more support in how to implement the math program. We had professional development last year with a representative. But I think that staff was just looking for more feedback. So Beth was able to secure this woman who's been working with us. We just started this week.
Good. And then on the M class, do those results go out to all parents, or is it just those that are have a score where there's maybe a concern?
So we are making that decision and we will share that very soon. We're not sure if we're going to go all grade levels. I mean, sorry, all performance levels, or we will just focus on below and well below. So
Okay.
we're still making that decision. Is that okay for me to say, Mrs. Steele?
Gotcha. And then for the Lexia, the slide says programming for K and T and then targeted for 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Do we have it across the board for
It
1 and 2,
is.
or?
It is across the board. And as I'm looking at this, I might need to go back and take a peek. I'm not sure that this is exactly what was written in, because it is K and T and all of 1 and 2.
Okay.
And the reason it is because it was more cost effective to purchase a license for all the students as opposed to individual licenses and getting up to a price point that was over $15,000.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
So our goals for Russell Street are the same. And Michelle stole a lot of my thunder, but that's okay. Some of our.
Saw a lot of head nodding in the back.
So,
so-
I know. So for the first goal, for Russell Street, our action steps are, as Michelle had indicated, we're working collaboratively in the Elementary Curriculum Council to align our curriculum maps, or to not align, but put information in our curriculum maps. We're continuing at Russell Street to update our standards-based report card. For example, the frameworks changed in science last year, and we realized that what was on our standards-based report card didn't necessarily align. So we made some changes in the standards-based report card so that would align by grade. So just adding the correct information, some things moved to different areas. And so that got just redistributed last year. And we'll continue to look to make sure that the standards-based report card is aligned. And we have K-5 collaboration for their vertical alignment, as Michelle was indicating too, in terms of curriculum. So our indicators for success are to always have a current standards-based report card, to update our curriculum maps, and teachers have been working on that as an ECC initiative since last year. And also that our curriculum and frameworks are aligned as any changes are made there. For the second goal for our math is obviously in progress. Continued PD for the new curriculum, and we just asked questions about that. In science, the updated framework on the standards-based report card, and for social studies, we're beginning our work in terms of curriculum review cycle. So we're just starting with social studies. We will, as our indicators for success, complete the Intermath PD, as Michelle indicated, this year. We had the walkthrough evaluations yesterday as well with Samantha from Lesley University. And also we'll be working on the updated curriculum for social studies and likely begin work on a new scope and sequence to match the new standards. And also it wasn't on there, but we're beginning a reading review as well. On the next slide, we are using forms of data. So we are happy to have reintroduced monthly data meetings per grade level at Russell Street. That you'll be discussing. It seems like we have lots and lots of data now. So we have MCAS, which is just the one time from the previous year, but we have 3 times a year for math. We have math, benchmark assessments, unit assessments, and also the early literacy screener that Michelle was talking about. Our indicators for success here are that on MCAS, for one of our goals is to have 80% of all of the students at Russell Street be in the exceeding or meeting category. I know that an MCAS presentation is coming up, but just to give some numbers, in 3rd grade, so we're really targeting, so there's exceeds and meets, and then there's students who partially meet, and within that partially meet, you could be 1 question away or multiple questions away. So there's a range there. And, we're always like, he was 1 question away. So, there's different ranges in that partially meets. Some students obviously closer to meeting than not, but that's really a group that we want to focus on. Part of that could just be a test taking strategy. And so we're really kind of looking at that, and we spent an early release afternoon really analyzing the data from last year. But just in terms of numbers, in that partially meets category for last year's 3rd grade, 40% were in partially meets for ELA, and 41% were in partially meets in that range for math. In grade 4, 37% were in the partially meets for ELA, 31% in math. And in 5th grade, 39% were in partially meets for ELA, 37% for math, and 30% for science. So that's a real number that we'll be working on going forward. In really thinking about what our strategies are throughout the whole entire year, and not just what we're going to do in the spring when the MCAS test rolls around again. One of the activities that we did, and I'm sort of jumping into the MCAS presentation, sorry, but I think it's really important when we looked at students for last year's teachers who had a whole year with these students, we did kind of old school, just do the same on a piece of paper, but we looked at each student. What do we know about this student? And it could be, loves basketball, something like that, or, really struggles with this or that. And that information is going to go on to the next grade level team. So they have a sort of a jumping off point with students to really kind of get in there and pick their areas of interest and things like that as they work with them. So it was a really productive afternoon as we worked on that. But that's one of our goals of success going forward. And then really to look at the into math growth data throughout the year when teachers do the benchmark assessments, and really the benchmark assessments remind me a lot of the real time like math data that we always talk about, where teachers can look at individual skills as they look through those benchmarks and be able to just cycle back and make sure that students, we don't just keep going past a skill that students aren't getting. And so it's last year, I remember talking at this meeting about a teacher stopping at my room and being really disappointed in the first benchmark assessment, and then coming back a couple of weeks later and like, my kids did so much better this time. So that's really something to focus on in terms of indicators of success. And it really gives us the ability to identify groups and target instruction. So that's something we'll be focused on. And then for the last one, effective instructional practices. We are continue to research and implement strategies and programming related to meeting the needs of struggling learners and also advanced learners. Our indicators of success, we continue to focus on universal design for learning at Russell Street as we are throughout the district. Also MTSS, the multiple tier support system, our student support team as well. STEAM activities. Heidi McGregor just launched our first STEM challenge called Keep It Watered. And it's designed a way to keep plants watered while you are away from home. So that's one of the first challenges. It just got launched today. And also we have been working with a PhD student that is a personal friend of one of our staff members since last year. And her thesis work is on creating enrichment for students. And so she has been kind of just working with us in terms of looking at enrichment, like creating a packet or things like that for students who, you know, get to the end of benchmark assessment or whatever, and they don't need to back up, they can go forward. So that's really important to be able to have that kind of information on hand. And so that's what we've been working on as well. Any questions?
Any questions? Ready?
Yeah, I have a question about MCAS, but I know that a presentation is coming up, so you can totally press on this if you want. But you were talking about your focus on the students that are partially meeting the standard. Do you have a process where you look at the standards that are addressed by questions that students typically miss to see if there's some impact on the curriculum?
Yep, so the teachers have all of the information, so they can literally go back very granularly for every student and click on and see, was it a short answer question? Was it, a multiple choice question? How did they answer? They can look at all the essays, the actual individual essays that students wrote. And then part of what we analyze sort of across the board is how does what is expected on the MCAS align sort of time-wise with what we do in the classroom. So, if students do, I'm just throwing this out as an example, but if students do really poorly at fractions, and that's what they're doing right before the MCAS, is there a way that we can move some things around so they have more exposure to MCAS in terms of just what we do generally? So that is something that we look at across the board.
Yeah, thanks. I always, for all of the effort that goes into administering MCAS, it's great to be able to use that data to improve instruction.
Right, and the information is really easy to access now. We, Beth helped me to do it, but we're able to just send the whole link out to teachers so they can look at all their individual students and go through and look at the questions. So if there's a common question that everyone got wrong, the teacher can think back, what did we, how did I address that last year with my group? But also when we were meeting about this a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what are some of the things that you can do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. So MCAS isn't all of a sudden MCAS in the spring. It's something kids are really used to. They've heard about it before. They're not nervous about it. Third graders are always nervous about it because they're doing it for the first time, but our fourth and fifth, should not be. It should be something they're used to and feel comfortable with.
And I have one more question. Can you talk a little bit more about your process for the standards-based report card and how you're developing it?
So we're not, it's the standards-based report card there's a lot of process that happened around the standards-based report card, and it's not an easy thing to go in and change. There was a lot of work done around it. When I was talking about making changes, we realized that some of the things that were in the standards-based report card before didn't align anymore with the things that were in the framework, and it was just in a couple of places. So it was more appropriate in fourth grade than it was in fifth grade, and so we had to have help to move those things around. But what we want to make sure of is as things change, if the frameworks and social studies change, then the things in our report card have to match up. And so we just make sure as things frameworks wise change, that we make those edits if we
So
need
when
to.
you say framework, you mean like the scope and sequence for the
Correct.
curriculum?
Yeah,
Not the
yeah,
DESI framework.
no, the
Yeah.
curriculum frameworks.
So that students are being assessed on the topic when they're taught it
Correct,
according to the curriculum.
correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No.
I was gonna make a comment about that. The MCAS, the 80% indicator of success you said, and just appreciate that you set a goal like that, given the statistics you said, it's not an easy one, like sometimes you write the thing in the to-do list that you already did to check it off, but like this is a pretty lofty goal and feels doable as well, like not an impossible one. And so really appreciate you sort of like naming that and then figuring out how to work.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a clarifying question to make sure I understood that correctly, because that does seem, I guess Beano clarified it for me. But we're kind of like 60-40 and you're hoping to get to 80-20. So is that, if I understand that correctly?
So you'll see when we do the MCAS presentation, but if you take just meets and exceeds,
Yeah.
and you figure out that percent, like you can figure out the percentage for each one, but if you take meeting and exceeding and you put that together, and then if you put meeting, exceeding, and partially meets all together, we're in the 90% or more above, right?
Right,
But what you really want to get is the kids that are partially meeting in the meeting.
Yeah.
Like kids who are meeting may exceed on their own.
Sure.
Over time.
yes,
And that, we see that that's what happens, but it's really to push that partially meets group up. Because as I indicated before, some kids are one or two questions away, like when you see the number and you're like, it was one question, so we just have to figure out how to, introduce some more test taking strategies and have kids be comfortable and just be familiar with the types of questions and things like that. And the more we do it, over the course of the year, I think the more we'll, but there's also kids that individual kids that we really want to target with additional MCAS type question practice as we move on.
go Russell Street. That's a lofty goal. I like that.
We'll see.
My other question was, or it was more of a comment, I suppose, comment and then a question. Thank you very much for bringing back the monthly data meetings. I would imagine that like per grade level, I would imagine that there's a lot of impact with those discussions that take place. You sort of got moved off of the perceived sweet spot for a start time. And we were wondering, is that going to impact when those meetings might need to take place? So I was just kind of curious, like, are those meetings taking place before school because you now start later? Are they still after school and now we're finishing much later? Or how's that impacting the staff?
The meetings run late
So they're after school.
and not everyone loves it, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
It is late, it's late.
It's an adjustment.
It's late to start for us.
Yeah.
It's late to start a meeting after 3:30. By the time our last cars leave and all of that in the afternoon, it's about 3:30 by the time people make it in and everyone gets to a meeting, it's 3:35 or 3:40. So if the meeting runs an hour, it's a late day. Having
We
said that,
appreciate it.
we want to have
Yeah.
the meetings.
Right.
So teachers did have the opportunity at grade level to do their meetings as they chose. So they could do them after school. There's just not enough time in the school day to do all the meetings that we
Sure.
need to do. So the meetings ended up to be after school. Our staff meeting is half in the morning and half in the afternoon.
Okay.
That has worked out pretty well for us. We do, Andrea and I do the informational part of the meeting in the first half hour of the morning, and then we usually do an group activity based portion in the afternoon. And that has worked out well. It's a happy medium for most people. And so that's how we've accommodated that. It's worked okay.
That's great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Everybody, thank you.
Hello.
So for the goal number one, for the middle school, we chose a bit of a different path for our school council. What we really did was highlight as our primary goal, a really substantive change to what it is that we want to do. And so what we have here is just a very detailed description of this primary goal. So the goal is to modify our support team, SST process and the tier 2 services. And that's not a small thing. This actually was born out of a research I was doing about a year and a half ago on tier 2 services and how they should be broken down per schools, especially in middle school. And I kept finding that the recommendation was to have like every school should have between 10 and 25% of their students receiving some sort of tier 2 service, which I was shocked by that. 25%, I was thinking would be much lower, right? With those that just really need it. And what they're saying is, no, you really need to widen, expand the search for that so that you're getting more kids into those services. Yes.
Can you give us a quick refresher on the tier 2 services?
Okay, yeah, no, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
idea.
So tier 2 services include in our school things like math lab, lit lab. These are supports that are put into a student's day or a student's schedule. They're not special ed, right? They're part of the Gen Ed program, but they are an extension of what is happening in the classroom. So that kids, if they need remediation, if they need skill building, other things that they necessarily can't get from staying after because there's somewhere there's a gap that needs a little bit more direct connection with a teacher. That's what our tier 2 services are. So what we found is that in over the years, looks like we didn't have enough students in these programs that we could be able to expand them. So in order to do that, we really wanted to establish, okay, well then who qualifies for that, right? We don't want to just be rushing kids in. And as the year goes on, kids who were doing great to start the year may be struggling in the middle of the year. So we needed the flexibility to be able to have something that works. And so this goal is really all encompassing of what we're talking about. So the idea here was to say, okay, we want to get more kids into SST. We want to make what referrals they do get more powerful, more impactful. So how do we do that? So basically, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but saying, all right, we're going to re-examine everything so that we are providing top-level, top-notch services for students, so that we can, run interference so they don't get referred for special ed, they don't fall between the cracks, and so it's really a preventative measure. So one of the things that we wanted to really start to do, if you look at the action step, is really breaking it down. It's really technically 3 goals in one. The first one is really establishing what are the thresholds, what consistent thresholds do we need to have grade to grade, subject to subject, so that we have consistency across the board with in how we refer students. So we use things like MAP data, MCAS data, there's anecdotal data, there might be grades, classroom information. All of this comes together for us to help decide who is in need of that service and when. And so what we really want to do is create some consistency so that we can say across the board that kids reach a certain mark and it's not just put in because of pressure, teacher pressure, right? Just the moment of this kid is struggling right now, but it hasn't shown that in the past. We really wanted to create that consistent mark. So really the first part is about creating those thresholds. Where do they need to be in the MAP testing, MCAS, grades, and everything else? And then after that, looking at how do we then, moving forward, how do we assess the growth that they're having in these? The idea is for them to gradually have it. We don't want to put a kid in the math lab and have them be in math lab for the next 3 years. My opinion is if that's the case, then there's something else can be done along the way. So the idea is if we get a kid in the math lab, ideally we try to move them out within that same year, right? They reach a level of proficiency, which we can then move out. That opens a seat for somebody else. And so we're looking at that opportunity. And so to do that, we needed to have some consistency in terms of what our numbers are and what the type of kid, the profile we want to see when it comes to those needs. So we'll go to the next slide. Second part of what we wanted to look at was how do we refer kids? And this is probably the biggest and the most important part because this directly impacts instruction. We have a referral process in which a teacher can refer a student based on what they're seeing in class, based on grades. But given the grade, given the teacher, those might vary a little bit. So what we wanted to find out was, let's say a kid is recommended to us and their grades are starting to slip, the map data is starting to slip. What happens in that case? How do we make sure that everything is being done in the classroom before we start pulling kids out of another class in order to receive these services? So the second part of what we want to do is we want to make sure that the staff across the board have reached a certain level of intervention just within their own classroom, whether it be after school, whether it be certain targeted structures. We have something called the DCAP, our district accommodation plan that is available to every student. Are the teachers using the DCAP? Have they tried everything they can in their classroom to help this process? And if not, that's when the SST process takes over. And so in this case, we wanted to add that part to the referral process. It gives us more information to be able to see, okay, teachers have tried A, B, and C. This is still not working. This would be a good candidate. And then finally, the third part, the third sub goal of this is really then to figure out in terms of progress. How do we monitor the progress? It can't just be a gut feeling. It can't just be the teacher saying, well, they're doing a good job. Let's move them out. And so we want to be able to have progress monitoring program. We want to be able to have periodic check-ins so that we are, from the moment a child receives the services to the time that they graduate out, we are aware, we're taking data, we're cognizant of what's happening. And so that way we can really target what we're doing to a very select group of students, but making sure that we're able to get more students in who might need it. Post-COVID, we're seeing the numbers rise of kids who need these extra services. And so trying to see around corners to say, we need to have a tier 2 program that is ready to be flexible and accommodate these rising numbers. I think what we've created is something that over the course of the next 3 years will certainly allow us to do that. There's a lot of words very fast, I apologize. So if there are any questions? Yeah.
It's such an interesting approach to like really focus on this one goal, and I appreciate sort of all the multiple action steps and your rationale for doing that. It's maybe a little bit of an ignorant question because I know MTSS, but is as you sort of move up in the pyramid, it's focused on bringing kids to grade level as opposed to those that that are sort of beyond and need additional challenge? Is that right? So we're looking at a specific group of students that are sort of below, John's shaking his head, below meeting grade level expectation, bringing them up, not necessarily pushing those that are above.
I think it's something that every school and every district face the struggle of how do you appropriately provide the same idea, right?
Yeah.
The same attention to students who are in the higher achieving category.
Yes, thank you for
You know,
taking the word. I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in most of the schools that I have. It's difficult because the numbers are hard to predict exactly where and what subject we find kids to be in. So it's larger districts might be able to handle that in a way that's different because they can be more flexible with what we have. We have, enough to meet these services or meet these needs for kids at that middle or lower level.
Yeah.
But within that, we also don't want to just say to high achieving students, well, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens so often in schools is we say, well, listen, you'll get all that when you go to high school.
Yeah.
And so we try to work with our teachers to say, okay, well, then if this kid is really high performing, and we have some students that ace MCAS, full points across the board. So how do we then with those students, how do we keep them engaged?
Yeah.
How do we keep pushing their ability to access curriculum and reach out beyond what they're currently used to?
Yeah.
And so some of it is a kid by kid basis, depending on where they are. We used to have programs like virtual high school and things like that. So those kids could extend and take high school courses. COVID kind of put a wrinkle in all of that. So we used to have those programs in the middle school. And the idea is to bring them back.
Yeah.
There's just a couple of obstacles that we have to get out of the way. So that's ultimately the goal, is to provide a similar thing. It's not as supervised and it's not as data driven, but really more interest driven. And we use the kids' own motivation to help create that. And there's some wonderful classes that are offered.
Yeah.
We just have to find a way to bring that back.
And some of that I think is UBL too. We've heard a lot about UBL and meeting kids where they are. And I just wanted to clarify that when we're talking about like tier 2, we're talking about a very specific group and not necessarily UBL, which is focused.
Exactly. Cheryl talked about those kids that are partially meeting. These are the kids that we're talking about. The ones that just on their own, they just need that little boost. They need that little push. And maybe it's just filling in gaps that they didn't get a couple of years earlier. Maybe it's, they're running into things that they haven't seen yet and it's a little bit overwhelming. And so these are an opportunity for kids with
with a teacher who can sit down in a small group and address those issues and really build confidence.
Yeah.
In what they're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
For students that are achieving beyond grade level, our map testing is used for a variety of purposes, but one purpose is to identify those students so that the teachers are fully aware and can enhance the curriculum to meet their needs. So I would hope VHS is going to be reinstated around the corner because those programs are essential to meet those kids' needs.
Absolutely. VHS requires that somebody in the building, if you get free seats, if somebody in your building teaches the classes, and we used to have that. So we were able to implement that program. That's really, really great. Unfortunately, post-COVID, we just haven't had that need yet. I do have 2 staff who are interested. So now it's just applying some administrative pressure and hopefully we can get them to take this on. It is a stipend position, so they are paid for it. It would be a real benefit if we can make that happen.
Yeah.
So that's the other part that I don't put in there is how do we get the challenge portion addressed in addition to those mid-level needs.
Great.
I have a question. You had mentioned, and I think we kind of all know this, there's been an increase in the need for services, especially since COVID. Probably see an increase as the kids are kind of moving up into the middle school. So how are you guys doing with kind of supporting those kids now with staffing? And like, is there any plan to or need to increase that staffing as you're starting to see potentially those numbers increase even more?
Well, this year is a really great year for 6th grade because we're trying something different, and I am thrilled with how it's going. We have a large 6th grade cohort, 140 students. I mean, just frankly, it's just too many for classes. You're talking classes of 28, 29, 30. And in years past, we might put a generalist in to draw some of those numbers down, but we went back to the drawing board, and what we found was if we could find a way to implement a 6th teacher that wasn't just taking what other teachers were doing and doing it in their classroom and hoping that we get a good experience out of it, we were able to create a second ELA class. So we have ELA reading, we have ELA writing. And so in terms of what we have students doing in that content area is phenomenal. They're getting double, but yet it's specialized. So it's not one teacher having to try and blend all of that. So the kids that are moving up from 5th grade into 6th grade are getting an extended ELA experience that is, every time I go into the classes, I'm thrilled with what they're able to accomplish. We also then look at, Cheryl kind of mentioned teachers have the data. So she shared with us the student essays from 5th grade. So now we have those things. So we're looking at individual students to say, okay, who are the kids that are strong writers? Where are the areas of need when it comes to this? And so now both of those teachers are able to sit down and target those skills in a way that we couldn't. So in terms of staffing, I think we're doing something special in 6th grade in order to meet that need.
That sounds amazing. And I love that you guys are working together, Charles, just to kind of get a heads up as to like kind of what's coming away. I know you guys communicate a lot, but especially when it comes to the specific goal that you have, it'll be really important for you guys to keep those lines of communication open so that you can prepare.
That's good.
Is that strategy of dividing the ELA going to stay in 6th grade, or is it going to follow this cohort through middle school?
The plan is for it to stay in 6th grade,
Yeah.
but I mean, let's be realistic. We all know how things go, but that was the idea. Is that it would
Yeah, I mean, I know
stay in
things
6th grade.
change in 2nd grade even more because there's a little bit more like, class selection or electives or whatever.
So there's that, and there's a certification issue too. Teachers, you can be K to 6.
Yeah.
Right. Or
So you haven't figured out for this year, but
right. In
next
a perfect
year.
world, we keep it this way because
Our population decreases from 6 to 7.
Right.
There's a draw to Parker, and that usually balances out. So
yeah.
I just thought, I just curious.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I like the attention to detail on this one particular topic, and obviously it's so impactful for the entire school. I just question on one of the indicators of success. You indicate dedicate at least one staff meeting to discuss and explore the SST process. Has that taken place yet, or is that scheduled for
So that'll be
later this year to sort of
upcoming
kick that off?
No, that's an upcoming meeting. What we discovered last year, just in getting feedback from staff around the SST process. The meetings happen at a time when most teachers are in their classroom. And so you're having these meetings with a small group of people. It's myself, the assistant principal, it's our, team chair, our BCBA, like we have a whole group of psychologists, and together we sit and look at the data, we look at the recommendations. But one of the things that was missing in that was the teacher voice. How do we get an opportunity for teachers to come in and advocate for their students? And so what we found in some of the feedback that we received is that it felt for some teachers almost kind of a little clandestine. That we were holding these meetings, but they weren't necessarily open to everybody. And they were, we hadn't gone the next step of trying to create opportunities for teachers to join us. And so one of the things, that particular goal is to say, okay, we've created this new process and we want to share it with everybody so that we're pulling the curtain back, everybody's aware of how it goes, and also providing opportunities for teachers to join. In fact, we had an SST meeting this morning and our 6th grade math teacher was able to join. And we were able to move 6 kids into math lab because she was there to advocate and talk about specific skill deficits, right? Things that don't show up in a MAP score. And that's where we want to get to. So creating that transparency is part of it, because we do want teachers to understand that, we're not twisting mustaches as we decide who gets in and who doesn't, right? But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're consistent with that so that 8th grade can have the same expectations as 7th or 6th when we do it. So we're in the process of redesigning the referral program right now, and that's the biggest obstacle that we're facing just in terms of time. It'll get done and we'll get done soon. But we want to make sure that what we have for teachers to do is really indicative of what they're seeing in the class from the students, and also what strategies they've used, so that we're not misplacing a student into a class or not putting them into a class based on information that we don't necessarily have. So it's really more about transparency.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, I had a question I'm glad you brought up the scheduling, because I know that you've worked really hard on your schedule and came up with a really innovative plan, and it's complicated because, as you said, like the certification of teachers, you have a lot more wiggle room with teachers that are certified K to 6, and then 7th and 8th, you're kind of locked in. So my question was, back to the tier 2 services, are these pull-out services? I'm assuming they are, like you're talking about math lab and
Right.
lab. So how do you keep all this pull-out from blowing up your schedule?
It's not easy, but we found a way. We schedule these classes to happen during our Unified Arts program, which I hate pulling kids from any class, right? There's just, but that's somewhere we have to take from. We certainly didn't want to take kids out of one of the core academics to get this extra help. And so we do it out of Unified Arts. And so a lot of times it might be out of art or music. We let the child and the family choose which one to drop. We try to keep health and phys ed in at all times, just for the activity portion of it. But we want to give families a say, because the hardest thing part of this is I don't want to take away a subject that's the one class that kid loves going to school for. Like, if you're all about art, I don't want to take that. So we try to provide that liberty. It happens during that time so that we are able to, keep kids in their gen ed classes as much as possible while still providing those services. We're even considering trying to create something in Math Lab where we have a math lab and an ASC split, so our academic support center where kids get for students who need executive functioning help. It's not necessarily remedial in content, but really it's their book bags, their binders, just finding entry points, right? And looking at a way, can we combine those two where kids spend some time at one and then sometimes the rest of the time at another, and flip flop, because we're finding that the two go hand in hand. But in so many cases, a child who's receiving those extra services also struggle with the executive functioning. And so if we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, that's what we're trying to do. So that's when we schedule it.
I appreciate how thorough you are with this. It's, this is really addressing one of the 4 goals, but you've addressed it in such a comprehensive way that it's really addressing more of the goals than just the one that you're citing. But so for the other 3 goals that you're not targeting in such detail, are those more status quo with what you are continuing?
Yeah, so there are things, exactly. There are things like when it comes to UDL, for example, right? The idea of we're working towards making UDL a daily functional part of what we're doing. We've already started that process with our advisory program. We took the advisory lessons that were already created and used, and we had teachers rewrite them with a UDL focus. And then the whole tool does them. So let's say if I write one as a teacher, somebody next to me is using my advisory lessons. We want to amp up the anxiety, the good anxiety a little bit for teachers, but also provide an opportunity to practice creating lessons in a UDL format that are low stakes, right? You're not going through a difficult unit. And so we're doing a lot of that stuff already. It just isn't a part of that particular goal because we want it to be so encompassing.
This is great. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Couple of things, Jason. as you're expanding your tier two services, you're most likely going to get to the point where you're going to pull out and push back in. So your current model may become somewhat redundant. So I just ask that you think about that a little more. Special education, our goal is to have more push-in services and pull-out services. So I want to make sure we're going in the right direction here as we move forward. Just a second comment with the middle school concept. You are fortunate enough to have teachers that have team time every day, and I would imagine that would help escalate the planning process for SST because of the scheduling that we have within the middle school.
More often than not, these students have been discussed at the team level first to decide, are we all seeing a similar thing? Is it just one content area? So by the time we get to that point, it's gone through the team to make sure it's seen. But you're right, we're very fortunate to have that time to be able to discuss students without putting them into necessarily a service.
It could be another avenue to not fast track, but to find that time that you're lacking right now.
Yeah.
I mean, every day you have team time, maybe, depending on what you're faced with, maybe the team time is 2 days one week, 3 days the next, and another time could be used with SST meetings.
Yeah, right. And that's part of the putting everything on the table and saying, okay, there's no sacred cow here in terms of what it is that we want to consider. And so as those things come up, we'll obviously absolutely discuss them. If it provides an opportunity for us to do what we're doing better and more efficiently, then we don't want to turn it back on. Thank you. All right.
Thanks very much.
John, how are you tonight?
How are you?
Good.
Hello, everybody. So here are our goals for the curriculum instruction assessment section aligned with the strategic plan. It's something that's already underway. It has been for a couple of years now. I think that our director of teaching and learning has already provided updates about this in terms of the curriculum review cycle at the end of the year, last school year. But the implementation is already underway. We've already adopted this curriculum review cycle. The secondary curriculum council gets together monthly to collaborate and talk about their cycle the process, as well as the departments meet monthly to discuss and follow through on the implementation of the review cycle. Right now, science and the unified arts are already underway, for language and history and social science joining this year. I provided a link for the committee and for the public to see the process and how it's all laid out. It's a very comprehensive process, so there's a lot involved for all these departments over a phased-in process over many years. So I want you to see that progress will be documented as we adopt and implement and complete curriculum renewal cycles for each unit or for each department, where we have, clearly, guaranteed viable curriculum, as they say in the curriculum world, and that is clear with unit plans and lesson plans and already an identified assessment. So that's our process there. I'm happy to take any questions related to that as we go along, or I could wait till the end. The next goal, this has been something that's sort of been punted and kicked down the road a number of times, so especially through the last few years. It's a passion of mine and the assistant principal, Keith Camo, is something we really want to do, which is to review and refine assessment and grading practices. It's a challenging topic because there's lots of different views among faculty on how to grade, on how to assess. But there's a body of knowledge that's out there in terms of research-based, evidence-based practices that we really want to make sure that Littleton High School are aligned with. And so we're going to lean on that. And we've had some building-based PD on it. But at the end of last year, we had our main building-based PD dedicated to talking about just sort of a soft entry, so just sharing articles, sharing the research, and some of the authorities on assessment with the staff, and then having them breaking them up into groups and discussing it, and then providing some feedback to us. And then we also intend to follow through with that this year. But our plan was in September to kind of dedicate this to our assessment, one of our building-based PDs. We couldn't do that because we had to focus on the vision of a graduate for accreditation, as well as we launched a new curriculum for our advisory called Character Strong. So these are the things that we experience, but we're dedicated to this goal, and I wanted to raise the significance of it by really clearly identifying it in our school improvement plan, where we're going to have to report back out to people about how we did with this. So we're going to create a schedule for review and organize hopefully a faculty-led PD day or series of days about research-based practices, continue our work on last May. This is something, the next action step is a little bit easier to accomplish in terms. So particularly curriculum coordinators, myself and Keith, examining syllabi, course expectation sheets, grading criteria, seeing the variability even within a department across five teachers in English. And maybe we'll see alignment in the math department. Perhaps they all, have a common assessments and that kind of thing. But it's going to be interesting to see as we delve into that, uncover the practices at the high school. Then we'll plan for the assessment. This is down the road. So this school improvement plan is over multiple years. It's not all going to be accomplished this year. The plan for assessing the vision of graduate will be published this year. But then we're going to have to create performance assessments with rubrics. I just heard back just about a half hour prior to the meeting that the US representative will be coming to visit Littleton High School next week or in the next 2 weeks to present to the faculty about the process ahead with the accreditation that involves the assessment of how we lay out certain criteria, things we want students to know, be able to do, but upon the time they graduate from high school. Well, how do we assess that? What are our indicators of success for that? So that's something that's a big one for us. But that's all built into our accreditation process. That will be attended to next school year. We've been planning for it, but there won't be the actual enactment of assessments until down the road. We'll also be inventorying different types of assessments at the high school. Just trying to get a sense of, what are the different practices among our faculty across departments and that kind of thing, and how can we learn from each other? How can we be innovative and have really take an approach, especially applying UDL to assessment, where students can pursue things that they're really interested in, passion projects. Some kids have different interests as well as different abilities when it comes to or preferences when it comes to presenting versus writing, that kind of thing. But we can, the phrase in UDL that we hear so often is, be firm on the standards, be flexible on the needs. And we want to also be flexible on how we assess so that we can still assess the standards and their attainment of it, but, could be willing to adjust and be flexible. So the indicators of success are there for you on the right. I kind of spoke to some of these already. But also I'd like to update our program of studies and syllabus for a section about assessment at OHS. I think it would be important to down the road to have some type of statement to the public, even prospective families moving into town, or people coming up from middle school. I'd like to have a slide presented, incoming 9th grade parents. But here's what we believe about assessment. Here's how we'll assess the progress of your student as they proceed through the 4 years of high school. And we can sort of say with confidence upon graduation that they've attained a certain efficiency level with a variety of different skills. And so that they're prepared for, as we say so often, they're prepared for college, if that's their choice, career, and of course, citizenship is going to be that in this as well. The next, this is well underway for the last few years, and we've heard a lot about this, and there's been a lot of attention paid to this across the district. And we really appreciate the investment in UDL, because I think it will we'll see the fruition of this down the road, especially as those students at the high school, as students who have had UDL instructional practices embedded in their elementary and middle school experience, then come to high school and then find it all over there. There should be a lot of benefits for us in terms of student learning. So we'll be further incorporating this in inclusive teaching practices. And just to give a couple, phrases that come to mind when you talk about UDL or universal design for learning, we're talking about a personalized approach where there's, the content is in multiple formats. We provide choices based on student interests and based on student abilities. There's some discussion earlier about the previous presenter about, we want to make sure we're reaching the students who are struggling and have needs, but also that we're challenging students who are advanced. And that's really important. We hear a lot about that at high school as parents have ambitions and kids have ambitions that I have some really precocious freshmen that really want to challenge themselves and take AP classes. I said, hold on, your time will come. So we have some sophomores though, that, who can, who are taking AP courses now and that, and there's also students who can take a final assessment and see if they can get, this is a practice that we've had at the high school for a number of years, where students want to challenge themselves by taking an advanced math course. We've even had kids kind of go beyond our curriculum at high school. You need to find a course that's at college for them to take. But if a student wanted to jump a grade in mathematics, well, we'll have them sit with the grade level they're going into his final exam and see how they do it. Sometimes they blow us away with their performance. Okay, here go. So we don't want to get in their way of students who want to challenge themselves, but we want them to be reasonable about it and not have unreasonable expectations or feel unnecessary pressure to excel. So that's a balancing act. We've talked about that in all the AP presentations over the last few years. So UDL in action, continue our professional development workshops, staff meeting presentations, document trainings and applications in classrooms. Again, I think it's also, we don't have this in our program of studies, but have a statement about what does UDL look like? Explain it to the person who's not in the education. It can be a lot of jargon. People who are not in the educational world. What does that mean for your individual's student? Breaking it down, really defining for how it's implemented, what it looks like at Littleton High School. So that would be something that would be a real tangible thing that folks could see, that we made a statement about that. And then in terms of indicators of success, documenting our evidence of how each teacher has incorporated UDL practice and inclusive teaching practices. We know we provide a ton of PD on this and really invested in it. One of the things I've also started doing last year in goal setting meetings in September and October with staff is having them identify a goal of how they're going to implement individually each teacher UDL. And then they have to provide evidence of that at the end of the year in terms of the evaluation process. So that's something that they found really doable because they have pub PD in it, they know how to do it. And so we'll see examples of that documented. And I think the other indicator of success speaks for itself. Next one is adopt and implement social emotional learning curriculum character strong. I'm happy to report to you tonight that is underway. We have launched this. This has been something formatively we've been talking about, discussing different curriculum probably since 2016, 2017, and then it sort of got sidetracked by something. But we have always had a strong emphasis on social emotional learning and how we, in terms of the climate and culture of the school, to have identified curriculum is something we now have at the high school. It's called Character Strong. And so this summer, working with them together, teachers, students, myself, other administrators, reviewed curricular options and selected the curriculum. And thank you, Beth, that was instrumental in helping provide the time and so a lot of the resources for this. So we've had faculty training in it. We've already surveyed students about it just recently about their experience. We're implementing 15 sessions and they're variable by grade level. So it's I wanted that. I'm glad we were able to incorporate that. Some schools adopt a curriculum that's the same for grades 9 through 12. But there's a really big difference between a 9th grader and 12th grader. So they have different sessions on that. And I guess I imagine there'll be pros and cons, and some students might see it as an add-on, an unnecessary thing. And other students we feel really need it. They just don't know it yet. So some of the topics that were included in the 9th grade sections, these are some of the topics. Well, we really focus on welcoming and getting to know you activities, icebreaker activities, the first session, building connections and community, and a sense of belonging. Those are sessions that are dedicated. This is all done during a flex block in about a 35-minute session once a month. And there'll be a couple months where we have to do an additional session. Perspective taking, managing emotions, empathy, goal setting, all good things we would want for our children that are instilled at home but reinforced at school. And some kids, we see them at different levels of proficiency when it comes to managing emotions or perspective taking, especially in 9th grade. And we see more advanced things we can do with the 12th grade related to leadership and teamwork. And so their sessions are going to vary a little bit. But this will, again, I know it's important to be able to document success. So we'll have documented completion of the curriculum implementation steps. That's already underway. And our survey data that we'll be able to, I think there's a presentation scheduled on a presentation calendar for in the future for school committee. We'll be able to report out. I'd like to bring a few teachers who have been, clinicians who have been really helpful with this implementation and adoption of the curriculum. And so they can kind of give you their firsthand experience, not just hearing from the. So those are our 4 goals. And I've been here a while, a little bit, and I'm glad that it's 4. There are 4 primary goals in just this category. Because in the past, and Kelly and I have talked about this over many years, a lot of times our school improvement plans were looking like strategic plans. It was just too much. It set, bold and audacious in some cases, but also doomed to failure because it was impossible to actually accomplish and implement because there were just too many things for staff to do on top of everything else. So I think it's a real reasonable school improvement plan. These 4 goals that are set out, and happy to present them to you tonight, and answer any questions you have.
I noticed in the last piece that SEL program sounds really great. Is Character Strong, is that like a package that you
Yes.
chose from
Yep.
among competitive?
Yeah, we looked at a variety of different options, and this was the one that we really, it was consensus for sure. I'd say that unanimity. I think we were like, this is the one. Kids who were represented on it liked it. We had a chance to delve into all of them. But it's not something, if we feel like it's not working too, we can always revisit it. But we felt the sessions were really helpful, and we liked that there were a choice in the activities. It was very important to us. We set out. I don't have all the criteria in front of me, but I'll present that at a future presentation. But one of the things, it had to be really turnkey. So yeah, the canned curriculum sort of thing, like, off the shelf with videos and activities already planned out. Is one of the things we really respect. The faculty didn't need another thing to do, or perceive this as an additional prep, which I know you can understand only being in schools, having it in schools, another prep, and then there's a whole negotiation that has to happen related to that. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible for the staff to not feel too taxed and burdened by it, so that they would actually show some enthusiasm for it too.
And I'm assuming these classes or whatever you call them sessions aren't graded.
No,
Okay,
no,
that's great.
no, we can
That's
track
nice
their,
and stuff.
we can track their engagement and completion if there's an activity that the advisory teachers can. But I think it also provides an opportunity. One of the really important parts of an advisory model is that our students stay with their advisory teacher all 4 years, from 9 to 12. And it's really important for them to have, stuff to talk about. And, it's an opportunity. It's an entry point for engagement to get to know a student, what they believe and what they value, and in turn for them to get to know the teacher or advisor.
Love it.
Is social emotional curriculum a DESE required criteria, or is that something you all chose to do?
Well, I know we chose to do it. I don't think all school districts have adopted it. It's certainly strongly encouraged by all the administrative associations, whether it's the superintendents and principals, certainly the different associations for clinicians, school counselors, the school counselors. I would say that it's endorsed by DESE. There's a whole section on DESE's website dedicated to social learning. But I don't think it's a framework-based thing yet where it's like mandated. It's certainly not mandated, but it's something that is strongly encouraged by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
No, I really appreciate it because you don't often hear social emotional learning when you're at high school age, and gosh, we need social emotional learning through adulthood, right? Like it's an always learning process. And so really appreciate the priority and value.
I would tell you that a lot of it's, anyone who's gone through leadership courses and things like that has had a segment of it dedicated to emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, social awareness, relationship building,
Yeah.
those types of things. All important parts of leadership, but all important parts of just being a citizen or a human being.
Yeah.
And I think the emotional intelligence piece is important to identify explicitly that is that's part and parcel of the Character Strong curriculum that really appealed to us.
Yeah.
And that's something where we've been talking, it's aligned with, CASEL standards, which is a really important, they have a little body of research on important to social emotional learning in school. So it's something that we certainly need, I know it's something when we hire people in corporations, whether if you're not even in the nonprofit world or in education, people look to hire people with emotional intelligence.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
sure.
And doing it sort of at every stage, because it looks very different, obviously, in the elementary years, and then college and turning 18 is like a crash course in adulthood. So like, it's really important in the phase that you have them
Right.
to revisit it in an age appropriate.
And the elementary, of course, that's embedded in, and that always has been, and they've been explicit about it at Shaker Lane, Russell Street, and even the middle school, I would say, in more recent years, especially since Kelly arrived, I think that we need a real emphasis to build, apply social emotional learning coursework into the middle school.
Mhm.
But it's always been a K-5 thing, and now it's
I love it.
pre-K to 12.
Well, I appreciate your focus on assessment. I think that's so important because assessments end up driving instruction. So it really, if you can get everybody on board with the same mindset, it can be really a really powerful driver of
Yes.
success. But I appreciate how you're really tackling this complex issue at a grassroots level
Yeah.
and getting buy-in from your staff. I mean, teachers come highly qualified with a lot of credentials, and I love that you are tapping into that and getting everybody's input before moving forward
Yeah,
with something that's
Presenting them with research, because a lot of people, I appreciate you saying that, because a lot of people teach the way they were taught. That's the way it, worked for me, and I did fine in school and things like that. But there's a whole evidence-based practice out there on how to assess it. We have, there'll be vigorous debate among faculty, just like there would be, especially in higher ed, about redos, projects versus presentations, grading timelines, posting grades, when, how often. The parents, and I have a lot of conversations with parents throughout the year about, well, what are the grades going to be posted? One teacher has one philosophy posting frequently, another teacher has philosophy posting only at the midterm. They're in high school. And then what about the returning of work, the feedback? How often should that be provided? So this is going to open up vigorous debate at the high school. But in the end, I think it will all have been worth it because we'll have a more refined learning and assessment experience.
Yeah, and if you have teachers listening to each other about the benefits of one approach over another, you might have some folks switching their approach
Yes.
to something that they might find more appealing. But but I'm wondering what kind of pressure you get from the colleges down, like to, if you sort of have to have your assessments in a form that colleges can accept on.
Hopefully they're moving away from the old blue books with completing essays in
Yeah.
response to one or two questions and having your whole semester grade determined by a blue book. We know that I would say this in fairness to my esteemed colleagues in higher education, that, some of the worst practices in assessment are at the collegiate level. So we want to be ahead of that, but also preparing. One of the things that we have not taken away at the high school is final exams, because we want our students to be prepared for that at the college level. That pressure that we will handle, the time compressed. But MCAS is on time. But certainly our students have a lot of experience with, we've had presentations on all assessments. There's a lot of assessment happening in Littleton public schools.
Yeah.
So students have, by the time they graduate, lots of experience with different forms of assessment. But we don't want to we did take away mid-years as a requirement of as a defined period of time, where there's a mid-year exam week in January. We felt like with our belt schedule, we could embed that right into the class periods. And teachers, if they had a long exam, could do part A in one session, part B in another, to maintain the integrity of the exam. But we do maintain our final exam, and that's an adjustment for our ninth graders, but we're also preparing them for college where they'll have that experience.
Are your innovations with assessments, or your anticipated innovations, are they going as far as changing the report card, or is this more of what's happening in the classroom?
Well,
daily level?
Well, there's a lot of outlier thinking out there, like related to proficiency-based reporting. There's a lot of discussion about that in Northern Report of New Hampshire, right? Where they're talking about, trying to grade students based on proficiency and things like that. I think we're far away from getting there just yet. We want to start just, with improving basic fundamental practices of how we do things that are really doable. The standards-based report carding that is done at some schools, like charter schools and things, that hasn't come up yet. We're just really looking to see how we can do what currently what we're doing currently, how can we do it better, an incremental approach.
Yeah, increased consistency.
You know, that's probably the most important thing, because there's a fair amount of variability, and there's a lot of feelings that, teachers have about their own autonomy, and we want to respect that, professional autonomy, but at the same time, they're part of a school system, part of a district, part of a building, high school. And so, they have to understand that there's certain practices that we want them as a town and as a community or a school committee want them to adopt, because it's in the best interest of kids. It's not their own personal preference on how they should teach.
Great, well, thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, John, I would just say I'm excited about these goals, and I get the sense that like you're really looking to just sort of the high school gets a lot of praise, but if you can knock these out of you'll really level up across the board with staff and the faculty. So there's some of these slides, some of the language you use just like really spoke to me. I don't know why, but
Happy to hear that.
like the idea of best practices shared, adopted, and documented. I think it's like the adoption and the documented piece that becomes so powerful, because a lot of times, I sit in a lot of meetings where great ideas are shared and it seems like it's the thing to do. And then, we all go back to our individual work environments and we don't necessarily implement. So I just love some of the language that you used there, such as like documented evidence for how each teacher has incorporated UDLs. So just the sort of the thought process that you're going to kind of like try to elevate everyone's game within the high school is exciting. So thank you for the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're good?
Yeah.
All right, getting back to the agenda. We've just got some subcommittee reports. This is before we get there. This is our second opportunity for interested citizens. Take a brief pause here to see if we've got anybody tonight wishes to speak. Dorothy looks down. Close the floor quick. All right, so we'll close that portion of the meeting. Yeah, right. Let's see, subcommittee reports. We'll start with PMBC.
PMBC, we did not have a meeting this week, so I don't have anything specific. I don't know if you guys have any updates on the high school roof. That's usually kind of the topic that we're talking about at PMBC.
The high school roof is 98 to 99% done.
Right.
There's a couple of punch list items that they had to finish up and some cleanup work, things like that. But the bulk of the roof is done. There's a snow melt system that's a brand new technology, first school in Massachusetts to get that. And that's actually a system that sprays snow melt solution onto the roof drains and onto the roof hatch and things like that to make accessibility and drainage better. So we'll see how that technology works. So we'll see where it goes. We're the first school in Massachusetts to get it. So we'll see. So we're excited about seeing how that works. So.
Budget subcommittee, I can report the budget subcommittee had a meeting in the superintendent's office last week. Business manager Steve Mark was in attendance, and we had a discussion about preliminary budgeting, some capital items potentially for our wish list or some deferred maintenance as it relates to some of our facilities. And the plan is to get a meeting scheduled every month going forward. So we just got to put another one on the books. Good. Anything else?
Nope.
No. It might be, you could elaborate on, remember that $15,000 discrepancy a couple of reports ago? So.
Yes, so
I could cover it, but you could probably cover it better, just.
So,
Just cross that off.
the answer on that is, when we made the budget presentation at the last time that showed that discrepancy, the town books weren't closed. And so by the closing of it, so this just kind of gets really technical,
Well, just from one fiscal year to the
accounting
other, yeah.
techno, whatever, but we encumber money from last year into this year for funds that we were gonna spend last year, but we issued POs and then the products didn't come in, or the work was over there, things like that. So so the $15,000 was a purchase order that we had issued in 2023. We had paid for it in 2024. It shows up in 2024 expenditures, but the money, because the town hadn't closed the books, hadn't rolled forward yet. So that's what that is. So it's really just a timing issue.
Yeah, sounds like an accrual entry versus a cash
Yeah,
entry.
yeah.
Important thing.
I just wanted that
Have the
to
money.
be.
Yes.
No deficit.
So we know what it is. It's not a deficit. It's not anything to
On
worry
record
about.
that, yeah, all set there.
Yeah, so
Policy subcommittee, any reports? Policy Subcommittee planning to meet soon.
We have a meeting on the books.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then the Shaker Lane Building Committee update, is there anything in particular as it relates to that project?
Again, I hate to punch it over to you, but you guys had a last minute meeting that I couldn't attend, so I wasn't aware of what
We,
the outcome was.
we handed in the latest packet to MSBA. Today we did receive an email with a little bit of feedback asking for more information. So we're close to being able to hire our OPM, but we're not quite there yet. But we do have a meeting with MSBA on November
November 2nd
2nd. So
is the MSBA board meeting where they will approve our OPM selection. And then after that gets approved, we can then sign the contract with the OPM, then start moving forward on the feasibility and design phase. So we're close. The information MSBA was looking for, we had provided the information, but it wasn't in their format. So we had to kind of redo that format and redo that information. We'll submit that, but we're really close. And public thanks to Ryan Farrar, who's put in quite a bit of work on this thing as well. So
sure.
Great. Before I take a motion to adjourn, I'll just announce that our next school committee meeting is October 26th, 7 p.m. Same time, same location, police station. Without any further new business or old business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Beano, seconded by Jen. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Have adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Record